Okay. Okay. So I'll just, yeah. So it has provided us with the default context root node in the controller. Okay. So this is basically a context node which is provided by SAP for us. Okay. So I am going to call it as a, okay. So under this context node, we create our context nodes, whatever we want. Okay. Okay. So whatever we wanted, we, for example, for example, this context node is is wd underscore context interface which is used by this particular context node. So whenever I declare a context node, whenever I declare a context node, this context node gets stored as a child node, which is like subclass of this particular root class. Okay. So this root class implements this interface. Then my subclass is also implement the same interface. Okay. So meaning that how much of hierarchy I'm going to have, all within the same type. This. Okay. Based upon that, so whatever the context node which we are creating, those elements, those references will be stored in the root context node. Okay. So there are API methods which will add the instance will be added default by the framework. There are API methods which will give us the instance to work on the context node. Suppose if I wanted to work on the context node 2, then I need the reference of this. Okay. So there are API methods which will provide the references of this. So this context node, once again, which you are creating, it's again a class. Okay, so it consists of attributes. So we have the same API methods which will assist us in setting up reading the value from the context node. Okay, so this is the same scenario which I have tried to implement here. Okay, here I have created the root interface. Then we created the class for the root context node, and context node uses the interface. We have the API method to add the context node, get the instance. This was the interface I was created. Yeah, I told you right on top of all of this interface. With that, I am following the hierarchy. Okay. Now, whenever I am declaring the node 2, a class has to be created, right? But as of now, in the framework, it doesn't know what is the class that is going to be created in the future. So, if I need to store the reference, I need to have a type. Okay. I do not have a type now. Okay. By root of inheritance, whenever we use the interface acts as a superclass. Okay. Which means all the subclasses under that share the same feature. Okay, with that assumption, I am assuming that this is also compatible with this. Becomes a subclass of this. Okay. For that purpose, created an interface. Then we have created our root context node. This root context node contains an internal table which will store the instances of node which are going to be created. Right? So I have this API method which will do the job. Okay. So these two are basically nothing but I have created a singleton class, which means that can be only one instance at the runtime. Part starts. So this root context node is a singleton node for me. So I have this reference L1 underscore root. Okay. Now I have this. Now I have this reference L1 underscore root. Okay. As now, assume that I am going to create a context node, node 1. Okay. Now, when I'm going to create a context node, node 1, then I have to store the reference of this node 1 in the root context, right? So that was done by the framework. Okay. So what I have done, I have created a method. I have created the reference of the class which is going to be created. Then I have created a method add context node, which will show me the reference of the context node in the root class, right? Okay. Now what I have done is I have created a context node SFlight. Okay, so for the context node SFlight, I have created a class. This context node SFlight has the data of all the fields in the SFlight. I mentioned you, right, it will be stored as a structure. Since I am using all the field, I am directly declaring the structure. And here I am inheriting from the superclass, which is LCR underscore context. Okay, so I have created a reference of this particular node as L1 underscore SFlight, and I have stored this reference in this context node. Now, if I wanted to work on this particular node, I need this reference. So, who will give me this reference in the runtime? The root will give me the reference of this context node in the runtime. Okay. So, now I'm going to add one more API method, which will give me the reference of the root context node. Sorry, not the reference of the root context node, reference of the child node, the one node which we have created. Okay, so this part is done by the framework. Now let's go on to the action which we were supposed to do. I have created a context node. Now I either want to set the data in it or I have to read the data whatever is there in from it. Okay, so now I need the reference. So who will provide me the reference? Right? No, reference is stored in the context node, right? Root context. The reference of this node is stored in the root context, right? So it should give me the reference. Okay. So ideally there should be a method which will return me the reference. Okay. So I'm going to add one more method in the class which will return the reference. Get child. It is importing the name of the node name. Using the generic type of declaration. Okay, because I don't have the specific value here. So all the instances are stored in the internal table LT underscore nodes. From it. Name is equal to what is the name I am receiving? I am receiving I am passing here. So if that reference is available, what is the program I am getting it? So be stored with the internal table with the node name and the reference to it. Okay. Here I have passed the reference. Sorry, here I have passed the name of the node. Based on the node, I am picking the reference and I am providing it back. perform action here in this node, I need the reference. So I'm going to get it through the API method get child node. Okay, I already have the reference of the root node. Okay. So using this, I'm going to call that. So in generic terms, I have declared it's a widening widening cast, widening cast. Okay, I will explain you. So what is the name of the node which we have declared? Yes, flight, right? The node we have declared. Okay, by passing the node name, I'm getting the reference and I'm storing it here, the variable. Okay, here actually what I have done is I have declared the variable of type this, of type superclass. Okay, so this is more generic one, subclass, right? This is specific one. Okay, and this is generic one. Now I have declared the type of this, but I am storing this. Okay, which means I am storing the specific one into the super one, yeah, into the generic one. Okay, when I store the generic one into the super specific one, it is compatible. Okay, why? Because all the things are going to be coming under this. So the rule of inheritance, whatever the property is shared, that is common for all the subclasses. Okay, but this is upward hierarchy. The specific one value I am going to put in the form of this. Okay, so to make it compatible, SAP has provided an operator called widening cast. Okay, it's just an operator, but conceptually there is more to it. So we are doing it. Okay, here I am. I'm going to work on this node. I need the reference to this node. I got the reference now. Okay, now I wanted to set the value of this. So I should have an API method for setting and getting the values back. Right? So I'm just going to create those API methods now. Okay, so I think we have already created it. Yeah, we have already created the API methods. So we have created the structure that it will store the data. Apart from that, we have created two API methods. One is set static attributes, another one is get static attributes. Okay, so the get first we will look into the set. So the set static attributes, what I'm doing is whatever the set of values that I'm passing. Here, for example, the context of cardinality is 0 is to n. It means it can store any number of values. Okay, if I'm storing 10 records, what will happen? I have to create a number of 10 records, right? So I'm going one by one. I create an element and I'm storing the value in that element. Then I have the list of elements that I have created. Okay, then I will show you the debugger. Then the API method is called. With the list of elements I have, I give it back one by one. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set that. So for example, I'm just loading some files initially. Okay, so I got through my logic. Now I want to set the data in the context of so that on the context can be on the user interface. So I am having the context API method to set the data in the context node, right? So the method is gets set static attribute. So I have the reference for the node L1 underscore node underscore. First I'm going to set the values. Okay, because if there is nothing, I will not be able to read anything. So I'll set the value and I will read it. I'm passing the data which I wanted to store. Now it goes as a reference. Okay, so this is fine, whatever we have done. So now you understand that each and everything will be stored as a class. So you should understand this hierarchy. It will have a reference of the root context node. Okay, which is this one. Okay, we have the reference of the context node, which is LCR underscore context. Okay, so now we are going to create a context node. So when I create a context node, a class will be created. So I'm getting the instance of the class. So that is just identify the number 0 is to 5. Just like LCR underscore explain. Okay, now the framework will add this context node, whatever we have created, to the node context node. So it will add into the LCR underscore node. Okay. Okay, actually I came out of the class method. Okay, so you can check it over here. So I have stored the reference of this node, the name and its reference. Okay. Now, from here, our part begins. Our programming part will be pro. Okay. So first thing I wanted to set some value in the context node. Yes, slide. Okay. I have created the context node. Those part are done by the framework. I don't have anything with me. Right. So first thing I want is I need the reference of this node so that I can perform operation on this node. Okay, so I am calling the context API method. So I am calling the context API method get child node by passing the name of the node. So what it does, it reads me the value from this one and it provides me the reference back. So R underscore node will be 0 is to 5. It provides the same reference that it was later. Now the same reference will be put in over here. So I am going to set some data. So I have generated my data, 5 rows. Now I am going to set static attributes context API method. Set my data in the context node. Now, 0 is to 5. So 0 is to 5 is for S like node. So this is where I'm specifying is set in this. Okay. So what is happening here? The data one by one. creating an element. Okay, so I'm creating an element 0 is to 6, and I'm storing the value of the first row in 0 is to 6. So our identification, yes, for each and every row it will create an element. Okay, so this is framework part. Yeah, this is framework part. Actually, I'm explaining how the framework will be storing it. Okay, so in the context mode, it will be stored as this. What is the elements? Okay, yeah, only the references. That's what I'm going to copy the elements. Okay, so it will be stored. So if you see here, each and every row is a unique one. So in this reference, if you take the ls underscore SFI, the reference will be something different. Same if I take for the reference 7, the value will be different. We are able to see the value changing. Okay, different. Okay, so we only have the list of elements, which is list of references. We don't have the actual data. So this is the context now shows the data. So we have stored the data now in our internal, so in the context mode. Okay, now many people they source the context mode source data in the form of internal data. Okay, the only thing is that we provide the data in the form of internal table. It does not store as an internal table. It only stores as the references. Okay, I am going to get the values from the context mode. Okay, so we have set some value. Now I'm going to get the value back. So for getting the value, the same thing I'm going to follow. Going to call the method get static attributes this time. I'm storing it in the same internal table for the table. Whatever the value I have stored, it has the exporting parameter, it does not have returning parameter. So if it is exporting that, then it is going to be importing from here. Okay, I'm importing the values in the mp underscore flight underscore data. No, I'm requesting for data back from the context node. So the context node, how the data should be stored, it will be stored in the form of so for each and every record, what I'm doing, I'm going to the record, indicate with the first value, 6. Applying the value to the internal table. I'm taking it from the data that is working at we have created. We have created and I am showing it in the currently the value here. So for the second instance, 0 to 7, here, second record. So likewise, I am getting the values. Okay, so this is how it was done within the framework. Okay, now there is one to one changes from which I have done. Okay, if you see in here, which I wanted, I have created them in the respective classes. Okay, but in the SAP framework, this was not created in the corresponding classes. Okay, all these methods will be defined within this interfaces. Okay, so all the API methods will be declared here and be implemented by some other class. Okay, just for your understanding, I implemented it then and there. Okay, but all the things will be implemented over here. So since whatever we are doing on subclass of this, all the things are available over here plus. Getting my point? So here, so it is already available to here, to be here. Okay. Other change. This is our book. This is our context mode, right? This is our context mode. Okay. So for this, we have created the node reference. This here. We have created the node reference, right? This is node reference. So these are elements, right? These are element references. Okay. Now, two important interface you should have. One is if underscore wt underscore no. Okay. The other one is if underscore wt underscore context underscore element. Okay. So this will not be stored as the same type of context node. This will be stored with a different type of context element. Okay. So I will just open these two API interfaces and I will explain you. Wt underscore context underscore. Okay. So okay, this is interface for context. Okay. Here we have bind the element, or if I wanted to bind multiple elements, I can bind it. So store the data source structure, store the data source internal table. Then we have get child node method, get elements method. So start working on it, you will be able to know why these methods are. So you may not be using all the things at once. Most of the things will be common like get elements, get lead selection, get selected elements, some of this. Okay, we will not be using all the way methods for our programming. Okay. If underscore context underscore element. Okay. So operation just specific to each and every element. So you are getting it. In the internal table, I have stored element. So to process the whole of the literal process the whole I have set up detail members in the if underscore ability context. Okay. Within the context, I have stored the data as references or elements. Element. So I will go to the concept. So in the same format, I will Which internal table you want? So okay, suppose if you want to change some data in the second row. Okay, so there has to be an API method. So now created two context data element, another one is change data. Okay, so I'm just going to implement this method. This get element as the importing parameter index. Okay, so in this context node, all the elements are stored in a internal table, right? Whatever the index I am providing. Okay, will return is the element reference of the requested row. Okay, now creating a method, one more API method. This method has two important parameters. Okay, one is reference of the row that I'm going to modify, and what is the reference. So already the existing value is stored in the LR, right? Okay. Now I am going to change it with the new value. Here, what I am going to do, okay, so now I need to get the third row. Okay, so I am getting element variable. Okay, so first thing I am going to get the reference. So that's all the reference. The context no has. Okay, get element passing the index as 3. Okay, now the reference of the third row will be given to me. Okay, so assume that Basically, these things we don't do. Constructive class for your understanding. All these stuff are taken traditionally by the framework. We are just going to make use of the method to. Okay, so now in addition, I have created three API methods. One will return me the reference of the index which I am reference of the row which I wanted to change. Other will return me the actual value based upon the reference. Okay, then modify the data. Okay, so by calling the first method, row which I wanted to change. Okay, now the reference of the row actual content, right? Equal to Okay, so using the reference of the element, I'm getting the actual data. Then I'm modifying it something. Okay, I'm just modifying the content as L instead of whatever the value is there. Using the reference, I'm going to update the data back. Okay, self-reference, self-reference, which we are currently working. So using the element reference, data. Okay, so I'll just show it to you in debugger. So if you see in the root context node, values are stored as references. Okay. Now my third row is 0 is to 8. So I'm going to modify the third row. So I take the reference of the third row method, which will is here. It is the reference 0 is to 8. So now I got the reference of the using the reference of the third row. What is the actual content there in the third row? 280 base its maximum. Okay. And I'm modifying the value. I'm going to set it. So this is the reference of the third row. Third row data I have. Now we see here context node. We have references. This is the data in the okay, suppose we wanted to change the second value, then I need to change it with the reference of the second element. You understood my point? So this is how it is stored internally. Okay. So I hope you got some idea on how this framework works. Okay. I will just show you. You did not worry about the UI part. We haven't covered it as of it. I just want to show you the same example. So that's why I'm going to create a table. You guys don't worry about it. So this is our root context node. And here context node under this. Which we can store any number of records. Okay, actually I'm going to take the attributes from the structure. That's why I'm specifying it here. Constructed table. And the view context. It is available only in this view. So I have created the table and I have pointed the table to the context node to display whatever the value is there. Okay. So I'm just going to populate some values in there. So I will explain you the coding which is generated now. Okay. So the output you will have some clear idea. So what I'm doing here. That's what we have done there, right? Okay, so we have displayed some data in the form of table. Okay. Now we will see how the data is actually stored in the table. Okay. We take the example here. For the root context node was created by the framework. So it has been also created by the framework. Okay. Now from here it is our action. Okay. The first thing I need is I need the references of the context node so that I can add the value. Okay. So that I get the reference of this root node now. Okay. So by the framework, this is our root context node, right? This is our root context node. The root context node is provided by the framework to us. which is WT underscore context. Like that which you are talking about the whole hierarchy. Okay, so the reference to the root context node is available to me by default by the framework as WT underscore context. So using this reference, we can get our context node, the context node, the reference of the context node which we have created. So what we have done here, I have called the get child node method. By passing the node name, I have got the reference. Okay. So if you see here in the coding, this is the reference of the root context node. So in the first step, what I am doing, by using the reference of the root context node, I am calling the get child node method of the API, passing the name of the node I wanted to get the reference. So whenever a context node was created, I have created the context node with the name slide, right? So this is the new controller. Constant variable will be created. This WTCTX underscore name of the node which I am creating. That's why it is here. Okay, so the code is a fix information and generate the code for us. So what is the first step? Using the reference of the root node, I have passed the name of the node which I wanted to get the reference. By calling the get child node method, I got the reference. So once we got the reference of the node which we have to process, we call the get static attributes method. Okay, so this is something I have made. That the context API, so the node, right? It has a method table for the data in a set. Okay, so now this will contain the reference of the node. Using the node reference by calling the bind table method, setting the value whatever I want to set it. When I create into the context node, I don't know what is the reference of it. Context node has all the references. The get child node in mind, the name of the node, with reference. Okay, then I have the using the context API method bind table. No. Understood. Okay, so if you wanted to get the values, then you have to get static attributes. Okay, suppose if you wanted to change the third row, okay, then there is a method called get element. So for changing the third row, what should I do first? I should get the reference of the third row. So to get the reference of the get element method, which is an importing parameter index. To get the value, get the get static attributes method. Okay, suppose if I wanted to get the value of particularly char ID or com ID alone, get attribute where I will give the value of char ID alone. Here to the name I will pass char ID. So get the value as a char ID alone. So you got the concept. Okay, so once you started working on it, you will be familiar with that. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yes. So, no, what I have done here is, what I did is, here we are actually getting the values, setting the values right. So I just wanted to have a clear picture of how it is done internally. So you will be able to program better here. So in our example which we have created, from this part what we are doing in our okay. About the class which is constructed or whatever the method which are there, all the things are done by the framework. So we just have to make use of those method. No, because when I was working, many people they used to come up and they ask the doubt there. Okay, so you just get some element of reference and if you set the value, you will store the particular row. Or then you have to work on the second reference. Okay, so if you have most of the people they will come and say it's going for a done. Okay, what will happen is the concept is not having any element at all. Okay, the element is zero, which means there is no value. What happens in output concept? If you read with a null reference,